not our goats. It's early spring, things are coming up all over, and we've caught the foraging bug around here once again after a long winter indoors. What we've got here is a patch of stinging nettle. If you're interested in learning more about this than what I'm about to cover in this video, you can head over to they'renotourgoats.com, where there's a blog post about identifying, harvesting, and preserving stinging nettle. So you should get a little bit more information there. And of course, there are many, many other resources all over the internet. So do your research before you go about harvesting, and you really will reap a great reward from it. It's very satisfying to do. This patch of stinging nettle right here is growing in a pretty damp spot on our property at the base of this retaining wall here, near our mud oven, and in a planting bed that is typically covered with leaves or mulch that helps to retain a lot of moisture right here. But as it's, you know, right up against the retaining wall, it's kind of in a neglected spot, more of what is termed a waste place on our property. And that's where nettle likes to be. It likes to grow in waste places. It likes to grow in wet places. So here's an example of it. I'll show you in a little bit another new growth down the hill in an even wetter location. Again, that's in a kind of a waste place, and you can sort of see where nettle tends to grow and the habitat it seems to prefer. Anyway, I won't go into too great detail on identifying it because there's more in the post and there's more that you can find elsewhere, but a few simple things to look for are, first, the leaf shape. It's kind of a oval or heart-shaped leaf. If you look at this one here, we've got a little bit of a heart shape. And one of the most distinguishing factors is these is the margin of the leaf, which is heavily toothed or serrated, and the veins are very clear and distinct. And then on the underside you can see that it has a purplish hue. The stem also is very helpful in identifying stinging nettle because it will be covered with these barbs, the source of the sting. I'll try to focus this on that. So you should be able to see those barbs there. And when you're looking to identify stinging nettle, as opposed to other kinds of nettle, you want to pay attention to, first off, like I said, the barbs that are on the leaf, because there are other species of nettle that don't have the barbs on the leaf and the stem. So look for that. But also look for the way that the leaves attach to the stem. You can see that they meet each other opposite one another on the stem. That's something that you're looking for to make sure that it's stinging nettle. But it's a pretty easy plant to identify, especially if you're a novice forager, like I consider myself to be. So it's not one to be too concerned about. And as far as I know, there are no deadly poisonous lookalikes to stinging nettle. So you're in pretty good territory, but definitely do your research and know what you're picking before you do. Okay, I'm going to show you a simple way to harvest stinging nettle without getting stung that just demonstrates where the sting's coming from. I'm going to harvest the young tender leaves. Again, this whole patch is pretty young and tender because it's early spring. So this is the best time of year to harvest stinging nettle for eating or making teas or any other way that you intend to consume it. They just seem to be the most tender and palatable, and later in the season they become a little more woody and bitter and maybe not quite as tasty if you intend on eating them or making them into teas. I prefer a very strong flavored nettle for teas, but the young tender leaves are great for a variety of ways to consume them. So anyway, having said that, this is the way I harvest them without gloves. I gently pull on the leaf toward me, toward the top of the leaf, right, this direction. And the intent is to lay down those barbs under my fingers so they don't go into the fingers. Then I pluck, I pinch and pull, and it comes off, and I have no sting. One thing to note also is that early in the season, the sting is much more mild than later in the season. So if you are interested in harvesting nettle, go out in early spring. You'll probably be able to find a patch in a wet area that's pretty easy to identify, with these serrated leaves and oval heart-shaped leaves, purple underside, and barbs on the stem and the leaf. And you'll be rewarded with a really useful, tasty plant that's got many good medicinal properties to it as well. I'm going to pause this video and go down to another section on the property where the nettle's coming up right now, so you can see that, like I mentioned earlier, it prefers wet, waste places. Okay, here we are on another section of the property. You can see it's very wet right here. This is a little pond. I don't know if you can call it a pond. It's a little puddle that catches the water that comes down from our hand-dug well in early spring when the ground is so saturated. We had a lot of snow this year, and we just had rain recently, and so we have a lot of water flowing here. And you can see that this nettle is growing right on the edge of this little pond. Again, I had harvested this the same way, if I was being brave or careless, however you want to think of it. If you want to avoid getting stung at all, of course, it goes without saying you can wear gloves and use scissors like a sensible person would. I'm just trying to demonstrate to you what's causing the sting. It's those barbs breaking off in your finger. Here's another patch right here, again in a wet, neglected area below our compost heap in our chicken run. You can see another patch down here in a wet, neglected area. It's getting a little bit on in this season here. I mean, it's still early spring, but you can see that this patch of plants, compare. This patch of plants is much larger. See the size of that leaf compared to the other patches that we saw. So this has probably been up slightly longer than the others. One interesting thing here is that I just realized this recently. This patch of nettle over here is growing right near a huge patch of jewelweed. Here's some jewelweed sprouts coming up right here. I don't know if you can see that, right? Jewelweed's a great plant for you to also learn. That'll be in a later post, probably, hopefully. But jewelweed is a great way to minimize the pain from the sting of nettle and from bee stings and other things like that. I won't go into a lot of detail about that because we'll write a post on that in the future. But there you have it, stinging nettle. If you're interested in learning more about exactly how to identify it, how to preserve it, how to harvest it in greater detail, you can head on over to thereNotourGoats.com and read the blog post on it. Give us a like on Facebook, give us a share, and make sure you subscribe to our email list. We'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and look forward to more videos on foraging coming out soon as we go around our property and around our area and identify the things that are coming up in the spring. And we'll continue on into the summer to show you other things that you can look for and different uses you can have for plants that are growing probably in your own property, depending on where you live. Thanks again so much for watching, and hope to hear from you.